spiritual space takes up no space. Wow, this is sounding very interesting. Spiritual space doesn't take up any real space, but it takes up spiritual space, which is not physical. It's like saying God has a hand, which has come up in some different conversations lately. Some YouTube personalities start screaming that to say God has a hand is heresy. What it means is that you have to start to think about what that means before you can define it as heresy. If you're going to just scream heresy every 2 minutes, so then people don't listen to you. But basically saying that God has a hand doesn't mean that God has this, which is a fleshy hand. That would be heresy. But saying that God has a divine hand is actually what God has, a divine hand. And what's a divine hand? So you got to start to understand. And what it is it's a spiritual hand of God. The Zohar, Kabbalah says this, for example, the right hand represents God's chesed, the left hand represents God's severity, judgment. And that's the idea of attributing divine, hands to God. And when you say that God has a hand, so anyone with any sense, I mean, like a 5-year-old today almost has as much sense. It means whatever it means as we're talking about God, because we talk about God loving us, we talk God getting angry, we talk about God, making miracles. So everything we talk about God doing, obviously it's not like a human being does it, it's like God does it. So if we say God has a hand, or God has whatever he has, so it means God in a godly way. And in fact, it's one of the deepest concepts that the Zohar and Kabbalah teach. And many great rabbis have decided to teach it to everyone in their books of Musar, of different Jewish ideology and approaches. One of the famous ones is the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, very, very amazing book by Rabbi Yoshua Horowitz. He's one of the few rabbis over the ages that we actually call holy when we refer to. We call him the Shelah HaKadosh, the holy Shelah, which is an acronym from his book Shnei Luchot HaBrit. And he, in fact, says in his book more than once that God has the real hand and we have the fake hand. And in fact, this is a very common Hasidic idea taught by many Hasidic scholars, rabbis, on Beis Din rabbis, halachic rabbis, and of course, the famous Rabbi Manis Friedman says it, and ignorant people try to scream at him and think he's a heretic for saying that God has a fleshy hand, when if they would listen to a word or two more than just the phrase that God has a real hand, they would realize he means God has a godly hand, which is a spiritual hand, which is true. And anyone who thinks he's a heretic is not only wrong, is making a fool of themselves without even realizing it.